All right, so we've got a great group of teachers here, so I'm just going to have them start off and introduce themselves. So if you can just talk a little bit about the student population you serve, the high school you teach at, and a little bit about the socioeconomic status of your community.
My name's Maureen Nooner. I teach at Pinelands Regional Junior High School. Our school's a little different. It's 7, 8, and 9 as the junior high. So I have ninth graders in the junior high, and then the high school's 10, 11, and 12. We're at Little Lake Harbor Township, New Jersey. Our socioeconomic is, it's deceiving. It looks like a little home, nice little community, but there's a lot of lower income families, lower educated families. They're wonderful people, but they just don't have a good sense of finance, and there's a lot of foreclosures that are going on and repossessions. So a lot of the kids are very familiar with that. So it's really important for us to reach out to the kids and get them a good financial foundation, because they're really not getting it from home. And many of the times the parents have said to us that they'd like to start, and we have been starting some classes at night for the people around our community as well. So,
Thanks, Maureen.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dawn Costco. I teach in Galloway, New Jersey, which is part of Atlantic County, at Absegami High School. It's 9 through 12. It's traditional high school. Primarily, we're very diverse. I can say that we've had, students from I guess very wealthy backgrounds. Like, in the past, the casino executives, they live on the mainland, and then down to students that are homeless. So, I haven't just had 2 of them last year in my financial literacy class, actually. So when you're preparing lessons and you're kind of, teaching about, okay, well, when you have this great job and you have all these bills, I mean, some of them, don't even know about, having a home. So it's, you have to kind of be aware of, you can't just talk from your background or your perspective, but from a number of different perspectives. And in the past years, obviously, we've, been hit, like Maureen said, with the highest foreclosure rate, not only in New Jersey, but in the country, in Atlantic County. And with all the casinos closing, we've had quite a reduction in the number of students that we've had to serve. And they're very well, and some of them have been through the foreclosure process. Some of them have lost their homes, their parents have lost their jobs. So it's definitely something that you need to be aware of when you're teaching the various financial lessons.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dwayne Hendricks. I teach at Cumberland Regional. I had to think about it. Cumberland Regional High School is in Bridgeton, New Jersey. Very similar to these 2 ladies. Our economic makeup is that of a rural area. We pull from 7 sending districts that encompasses 126 square miles that we bring our students in from. We have it all. We got wealthy students that own farmland and major contributors to that big export of farming, and we also have students that work for the people who own the farm. So it's, we have every color, race, and creed. They come to our school. We have 1,100 students in our building. So it's a pretty big crowd. It's a growing school district, I believe, with the surrounding areas, Bridgeton, Millville, growing. We also get an overlap of their students, so very similar to Absegami's situation. I'll have classes where I'll have a wealthier student who has a car, and I'll have another student who doesn't have a car, who doesn't have a clue what a bank account is, who only knows about money now because that's how they only have money now. They don't have that savings fund. They don't have that trust fund or savings account stored or saved or even started. So, it's a challenge teaching different audiences in one class each day, and then make it tougher. We're on block scheduling, so I got to do it for 85 minutes. So, it brings a challenge to itself, but I love challenges every day. So.
Yeah, that's incredible to hear. I mean, obviously, when you think about other subject areas like algebra, you may have a more homogeneous, especially with tracking in those sorts of subject areas, but the unique challenge you have as personal finance teachers as a requirement is you do have all students of all levels, but also all socioeconomic, all aspects of the socioeconomic strata too. So while we're on the subject of difficult things to handle, I'm going to start with you, Dawn. So what do you find is the most difficult subject for you to teach?
Okay, I think probably one of the most difficult is investing. What we were talking about earlier about having a future orientation, they're only in the now. They want to know, what am I going to get now? I'm only worried about spending my money now. I'm not really worried about the future. And well, it's a very long-term topic. I mean, we don't invest, kind of like the video said, it's not like you pick a stock and you're going to, make it big tomorrow. You have to think, okay, over the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, how does that relate to me? Like, I don't even have my first job yet. How am I going to worry about saving in a 401k? So I would say that's probably the most challenging. I think the terminology is also pretty challenging for some of the students. Knowing what, we go through the list of all the acronyms and, 401k and a 403b and a 457. And I just like rattle them off and they're like, what? And I said, it's just all sections of the IRS code, so they're like, well, what's the IRS? Then they're like, invest. And I'm like, okay, well, see, so you kind of have to I think back up a little bit from what, I knew growing up, just because I had to take a step back and say, okay, you have to go a little bit slower. They have to have this longer term mentality, which they don't necessarily come in with. And some of the suggestions that we had today, I think were pretty good. We also try to use the online simulation, which I'm not sure if one of the ladies over here mentioned before, about where they get a paycheck and they have to decide, how much am I going to dedicate toward, what percentage of my pay am I going to dedicate to a 401k, the H&R Block Budget Challenge, if you haven't used that. And that gets us a little bit more into, okay, well, what is actually a 401k? And another strategy I try to use, because I come from a banking background before I taught. I've been teaching for the last 14 years at Absegami, but before this, I was a regional vice president in banking. I changed careers. So I tell them my own personal story. We also talked about stories, and try to get, them to say, okay, well, when I worked for PNC Bank for a year, and I said, do you want free money? So now they're starting to listen, like, oh yeah, I want free money. Like, who wants free money? Like, every hand should be up. Don't you want free money? So I tell them my own personal story. I only worked there for a year, but they had immediate vesting. Of course, we had to explain what vesting is. But, I tell them that this is, I said, I put, a certain percentage, I think maybe it was $1,500 over the year. I said, and after I left, they had immediate vesting, meaning I took not only my money, but their money. So I doubled my money. So we're going to get 100%. And then of course, I still can't use it because I always tell them, I know I'm very young looking, but I'm not at retirement age yet when I could take it. But, but I have now $3,000, which is, it's sat there for the last 15 years, which has accumulated probably to at least till about, I know, with ups and downs, I'm going to say there's probably about $12,000 in there. And then I had to do nothing. So I took their money and I made $1,500 into what is now probably at least $10,000. So then that kind of makes it a little bit more important to them. Like, oh wow, like maybe I could do that. Maybe maybe this is important. Maybe I should start paying attention to what I have to do now, so that I understand what it needs to take to get to that point where I could have the money.
So what I'm hearing is not talking about investing in the abstract, but starting at a paycheck level, and then there's a deduction there, and then there's the, I always like, you mentioned free money. I love the, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Well, this is an example where actually it is true that companies provide that match. And then the personalized story to say, all I did was put in $1,500 and now it's $10,000 or $12,000, the power of compounding. That's great. Maureen, your most difficult topic and
Actually,
how you address it. Same?
It is
I saw you
actually the
nodding.
same. I have the same problem, a little bit from a different perspective, though. I don't feel so comfortable in teaching it. I mean, I understand it, and I feel like I have a good understanding, but when it really even comes to my own personal investing and things like that, it scares me. It makes me nervous. So I want to make sure that I'm teaching them the right way. So it makes me a little bit uncomfortable. So kind of what I did with it too is I read a lot about it. I try to learn as much as I can. And I actually went to an outside, I have somebody from Fidelity that comes in and talks to the kids about it a little bit, and they show them how to set up an online account to make it real easy for them, because I think that's one of the stumbling blocks for even the parents, because a lot of the kids will come back in and say, my parents say they don't do that. They're not investing, they're not doing that. And that's why with Fidelity, he comes in and he actually goes online and shows them how to create an account and what they can just even do a little bit on their own. So a lot of the stuff that I teach, I try to teach it in a way that they might be able to bring it home and show their parents, hey, look, we could do this, so, and they get interested in it like that because they have somebody that they could ask. And it follows what we do is we pick some stocks and some mutual funds and things, and then the Fidelity man will look at it and say, well, that's a good idea, but you could do this or you could do that a little bit. So they've already had a little bit of interest in it, but it's just an intimidating subject, I think, for me in general. I kind of always take a deep breath when I'm going into that unit, and I'm like, okay, here we go. So
How many others in the audience can cop to that also? Yeah.
one teacher doesn't even teach anything about it.
Yeah, so it's something we hear, and if you talk to the folks at WISE who administer that financial literacy exam, they say that's the area that students know the least also. And so what I heard was bring in an expert, and I think what's often forgotten is that hurdle of how does it work? Like there's the theoretical, should I be investing in index funds or mutual funds or individual stocks, but then there's also just how does an online account work? And I think demystifying that is incredibly important. I mean, one of the things we actually created a specific lesson around this in our semester course is understanding the hurdles before we even talk about investing. Like, what are the misconceptions that students might have about the market? It's incredibly risky. It's like a casino. Most people lose their money. I mean, you have to know where your students are first before you can kind of teach them the basics of investing. And
They call it gambling. When we first started, they're like, that's just gambling. I'm like, no, it's not.
tell me about a gamble where the average return is 8% per year.
But a lot of it, I guess it's from their parent, what
yeah.
they hear from their households.
And you're in Atlantic City too, so
yeah, that doesn't help.
Dwayne, you have an interesting background. I'd love for you to share kind of how you use your life experiences to educate your students about financials.
So a little bit about where I came from and what I am. A local product from Cumberland County. I went to high school in Millville. Obviously took care of my schoolwork. Went to the University of Miami to attend college on an athletic scholarship. After that, I had an opportunity to play for the New York Football Giants and win a Super Bowl. So
He has a ring.
I use a lot of. I do use a lot of that. And the reason why I believe teaching is for me because I have these opportunities in my life and my background that I can now present it to these kids and hopefully impart knowledge in them and how to live their life. And discussing with you, Tim, earlier, the biggest tool for me as a young teacher who did not go to school for education, my major was business administration and marketing, so I double majored at Miami. But the biggest teaching tool that I could find, because I'm a big learner. I observe kids, obviously coaching, and you got to watch them. I watch, and what these kids will do in this generation, if you tell them something as their teacher, they probably won't listen to you. But as soon as someone else comes in and tells them one time and they'll never see them again, they'll listen to them more. So I found a video, and it happened, that class I had, my first class in financial lit, was predominantly males, and they all like sports. So ESPN came out with the video Broke, and I said, a bright light went over my head. I said, I gotta show this video. So I downloaded it to the computer, and I showed that video, and I said, listen, this is a video basically explaining what I had the opportunity to see firsthand. I lived this life. I also brought in my old paychecks, and they saying like, oh man, Mr. Hendricks, you're making this amount of money each week. And like, they couldn't believe it, but then I showed them the video, and then they asked me, are you broke? Did you invest? I said, no. Did you invest? Yes. What was the right thing to do with it? So, having the opportunities to recall your life and then explain it to them, it gives them a feeling that you're not just reading out a book, because one thing they don't want to do is learn out of a book. They want to learn from people who's either gone through it or going through it. So having that opportunity, I think it makes me I guess, equipped to teach financial literacy in that sense, because I'm just basically explaining my life and just telling them what to do or what I've done right, or it could possibly what I've done wrong. You know, I'm not a saint. I haven't had the best financial literacy tools or skills coming out of high school, so I did stumble some places, but if we're all here to help these kids get better and be better people and productive citizens, you know, you tell them and show them what you did wrong, and hopefully they don't follow that same road too.
Awesome. Yeah, those of you who have not seen that documentary, ESPN Broke, I highly recommend it. What are the statistics on professional athletes? I mean, it's based on the premise professional athletes make a lot of money, but they also spend a lot of money too, and there's some pretty amazing statistics.
I believe the NFL leads all major sports as, I want to say 57 or 47% go broke within the first 2 years after retiring or stop playing.
Close to 50% go broke.
Just
And when you think about the astronomical salaries. And so then there's the other side of that, and we have some videos in our video library. I mean, there's been some professional athletes who've done incredibly well for themselves in the business world too. Folks like Magic Johnson is one. And so I think it's also important to show there are folks who make good decisions and how they've thought about money perhaps differently than the others. So I know we've got a lot of new teachers here. And so Dawn wanted to answer the question about what does she wish she knew, that's a tongue twister, when she started that she knows now?
I think I came in thinking that students knew more than they did about basic math. I don't know, just to bring it down to that level. Because again, I went to a 4-year school. My major was business administration, also. And I worked in banking. I mainly work with adults. And when I decided to come into teaching, I had taught at Stockton University, actually. I was, again, still teaching adults. And it was somebody there who said, why don't you do this full time? I'm like, yeah, this was like my thing. I'm banking. I want to teach finance. I can get to these kids before they mess up their checkbooks. So that was like I'm all gun ho. And then I get into it and I'm just like raring to go and I'm eager and I'm teaching them and I'm like, okay, and now we're going to do credit card interest and, we're going to figure out how much you can afford for a house and we're going to do 2.5 times your income and that should be, and we're going to do a percentage and forget percentages. I had to go, I'm like, whoa, it was kind of like time out. Like I had to take a step back and just say, well, all right, I'm thinking they know more than they do. Like they're coming to me. And these were, juniors and seniors at the time too. And, and I mean, now I teach some freshmen and sophomores, but at the time I was teaching juniors and seniors. And I just assumed that if I just told them to take 20% of something, that they could do it in their head.
Or 10%.
And then,
They couldn't do 10%.
and I'm like, you never knew, like, move the decimal point? Like, nobody ever taught you that trick, with new math on it. Or, like you said, 10%, just move the decimal, times 2. Like, you can't do that. I mean, they can't do it in their head. And I was like, oh, all right, well, let's go back. And I have to, teach a couple of the basics before I can teach them the other financial part of it. So I kind of, wish I kind of knew that going in. Again, kind of what I said before about, the investing piece and just having to teach it from a number of different perspectives, because I mean, you really don't know what's going on in their life outside the classroom unless you kind of ask, or if they're willing to tell you. A lot of time, I mean, the cultural differences sometimes too. I mean, I knew some of them from banking, only because I used to have to do outside business development, and I was told as a woman, like, there are certain businessmen from certain cultures, they're not going to shake your hand. They don't deal with women, and I'm like, all right, well, I'll just have to, I guess they're probably not going to take a loan from our bank, but I'll because I'm a woman, but, there's certain things that, you learn. Certain cultures, they don't have bank accounts because they don't trust banks. So there's a number of things that, I just assume I'm going to go in there and I'm going to teach them all about this and they're all going to be great at finance. And I just had to just kind of slow down myself for a minute and just kind of realize the different backgrounds they were coming from. And maybe they don't know everything I think they know coming into the class.
Yeah, I saw a lot of heads nodding. similar. And there's a ton of research that suggests what we call financial illiteracy is actually innumeracy. The lack of understanding of things like percentages. So storytelling is an incredibly important way for us to be able to convey lessons to students. So I'm going to ask Maureen first and then Dwayne to kind of share your best story to prove a financial point.
Well, because it still scares me when I think about this. When I was in college, the credit card laws, you could get them at 18. So they were all out there, and Macy's had a credit card. And I thought, Macy's, and I said to the person when I applied, I said, but I don't have a job. And they're like, it's okay. That's fine. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. And in my mind, I'm thinking, Macy's, I have no clothes. I am going. And I think I had a $500 balance. But in my mind, I'm like, no, you know what? I'm only going to go, and I'm just going to I need a new pair of jeans. So I'm just going to go get a pair of jeans. And it was so easy. I just went in and I got a pair of Gloria Vanderbilt jeans back then. And I thought it was so awesome. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. So I was like, I went home, and it didn't take me but too long, maybe another week or two. And I went back and I was like, I need new shoes. So I went back and I bought something else. And then I went back and I bought something else. But this was on sale, so I thought, oh, this is really cool. Honestly, before I knew it, I got it up to $500. I was up to my balance. And as the bills started to come in, I'm thinking, I'm in college. I don't have a job. What am I going to do? And if I told my parents what I did, they would have been really annoyed with me because they thought that I should have been smarter. But somebody offered me free money, basically, buy now, pay later. And I was really dressed pretty nice then, and I was happy with that. But the reality did sink in, and that's the part that really got to me at that point. It scared me. How am I going to pay that bill? Like, what am I going to do? My mom she would give me, back then, she would give me, maybe $20 a week or something like that, because there really weren't a lot of expenses. How was I going to use that? That was supposed to be like my food money or my gas money. I didn't know what I was going to do. So actually, finally, there was I took a busing, I could be a busser in a restaurant. I took a job doing that because I realized I was going to get in trouble. Yeah, like they were going to either come after me or I was going to have to tell my parents. And it really was very scary to me in college because I was all on my own and I had a $500 bill and I didn't know what I was going to do. So that's the story I try to tell the kids is that, well, I knew better. I should have known better. It should have been up to me to decide that even though somebody's giving you free money and they're saying, oh, don't worry about it, you'll be fine. I knew in my heart I wasn't going to be able to pay that back. So that's one of the lessons from my story that I try to tell them. And the other one is that I'm teaching you what you need to know so you don't get those feelings in your stomach that you made a wrong choice. Don't make the wrong choice because I'm telling you that. I learned from experience. Learn from what I'm teaching you if you possibly can. So that's basically where I go with that story.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks. Dwayne.
So I would use, clips from the video Broke, how they talk about football players going out and buying the heavy bling. And I stopped the video and I paused and said, class, now this is an example how Mr. Hendricks used to be. At one point in my life, I tell them the story when I got my signing bonus. The first thing I did with it, when I was playing, I told them how I played on the practice squad and how different the practice squad paycheck as opposed to an active player's paycheck is. So then when I had the opportunity to be an active player, they said, Mr. Hendricks, what was the first thing you did with your money? Because on the video, they talked about how the guys, when they got their either first check or their signing bonus, they would go out and buy lavish items. So I said, well, I'm a small town guy from Cumberland County, so my first item that I bought was a Louis wallet. I thought it was the biggest thing ever. It was like a $600 wallet. And then on the video, they're talking about $1,000 yachts and Mercedes and everything. So I was like, well, my big item, because of my small time thinking and my old school frame of mind, was a Louis wallet. And I said, I think I bought a pair of $300 sunglasses, and I was like, oh no. I couldn't tell my mom, and they're like, what'd you do, Mr. Hendricks? So I said, well, I kept the wallet, but I showed them the difference in understanding financial literacy. I think on that example that I gave them, the video showed how guys were spending a lot of money on unnecessary items. I bought unnecessary items, but I didn't spend as much. So it's just really a train of thought that you have to go into the purchasing process with. If you don't know where money comes from and how it works and how hard you got to work to get it, you're going to spend it at will. So those guys on the video, they understood they worked hard for it. So they like, well, I gotta buy something to exemplify how hard I worked for it. So I told them, listen, you can't always think of money as a mean to all ends. You got to think of money as a way to help you get what you need and things that help you live. These guys were using it without any regard to money. And then now, obviously, that's why the video was created, to help you guys, younger generation, not do the same things and use me as an example. I stand before you, I'm here, I'm teaching. They say, oh, Mrs. Hendricks, you should be retired somewhere. How big is your house? You got a mansion? I said, no, I got a single family rancher. I don't need much, because why buy all that? Why do I need 10 rooms when I can only sleep in one? Why do I need 10 cars? At one point, I told them I have 2 cars. At one point, I had 4 cars. What did I need 4 cars for? So I said, you know, changing careers and going into education, I had to be smart. If I didn't want to end up one of the statistics on the video, I had to change my spending habits. So I sold my cars. You know, I only got a small house. I didn't need a big house. I got a job. Most NFL players, once they finish, they don't know what to do because they didn't get their education. And I told them, and it almost lent itself to a segue into the next unit we did, which was education and advancement. Listen, for you to be successful in life, you need a degree. You need some kind of license. You need some certification or degree stating that John Doe did this. If you don't have that, it's going to be a hard thing to do, is getting a job. So, you know, using that, the video, and what I experienced, I tie it in together, and then I try to impart that knowledge into them, because again, they listen more to testimonials than they will from reading in a book.
Yep, and what a great role model, because I'm sure a lot of the young people look up to you too, and there's a lot of high school athletes who think they're on the road to the pros too. And so I think when you describe your path, the difficulty of it, it can be one thing for a teacher to say, you realize like 1/10 of 1%, you know, the numbers are even worse than that, can go pro. But for you to be able to say, you know what matters in the end? It's education. And actually to live that, that's awesome. Great. So we're running out of time here. Barbara handed me a card. So I just want to go down the line here, because summer's a good time to be updating curriculum. And I'll just kind of have each person maybe talk about how they're thinking about the next school year. You know, what unit or units they're working on, what changes, what tweaks they want to make to their curriculum, because it might spur other folks to be thinking the same. So we'll start with you, Maureen.
Okay. Well, I was telling Tim, our school is closed for renovations for the summer. So I took a lot of my files home, so I've been able to work from home a lot. And probably the one thing that I really did, the first one that I did was the last unit I taught this year was insurance. And again, it's one of those subjects that I know it, but I wanted to make sure that it was, you know, just really fine-tuned and everything. So that was the one that I went through. And what I did was I switched, because I had information from all over the place. I was pulling from State Farm, and I was pulling from all this, and it's a kind of a plug for, you know, Next Gen. I just really went through your insurance, and I took the whole insurance unit that you have, and I figured out what I was going to do and what I was going to change, and I have what I have to make copies of and things like that, and I feel like I have a much better handle on it. And insurance is the subject that we teach at the end of the year, and it's the end of the year. The kids aren't really listening. They're not paying attention, but it's an important subject. So what I kind of did too was I moved it. I think I'm going to move it in before budgeting, actually, to tell you the truth, because insurance comes in to a factor of our budgeting unit. There's, you know, housing and apartments and things like that. So I think what I'm going to do is maybe deal with it all in that one big budgeting unit and do it that way instead of it being a complete separate one, you know, because you had it like that too. You have the, you know, the auto and the renter's insurance and things like that. So that's what I did. I thought it just might make it a more solid. I'm not sure. I'm going to try it and see what happens. But I know my insurance unit is now really solid with all the information that I have. So
that's what I love about you personal finance teachers. You just love tweaking curriculum. You're always on the hunt for great resources, and then you're always mixing things up. Dawn, what are you working on this summer?
A little bit of everything. I do like the LinkedIn the lesson on creating that professional profile, because I mean, we do resumes, we do careers, we do, but we need to update it a little bit, because it's, you know, it's the way that they're going to get a job, basically. I mean, you know, my son is at Rutgers, his last year in Rutgers, and he's in sports journalism. And immediately, so, you know, people have been asking me, does he have a LinkedIn? Yes, he does. Since freshman year, he's, you know, going for internships. So I think we definitely have to add that to our curriculum. But in addition to that, because we always are on this hunt for so many resources, we tend to be overwhelmed with, and just, you know, I don't even know, like, you know, you try to teach them this and you're like, okay, now I'm not getting to this, and they don't like these handouts, and they don't want to take notes, and they don't. So what I've been doing is actually I did, and I'm going to do your webinar today, 5:00. But for the update on the half year, even though we teach it full year, I have a full year to teach it in. I never even think full year is enough time. So, but I wanted to pare it down so that we got to the most important things. I also did the how to teach investing in 2 hours, that one. So that way, you know, it only gets to the important stuff, and everything else, you know, so we're kind of trying to pare it down and make it so we just hit the most important points. Also, you know, the insurance lessons, I did use those, and they did like the, you know, the car insurance, and then where they get in the fights with it, you know, they get in an accident, and then they have to, like, okay, what do you say? Like, no, don't say it's your fault. No, you know, so yeah, so
It's a real good role play section in there, really, when they get in an accident. You know, what do they do?
yeah, because actually happened to my daughter. Speaking of personal stories, like, she, like, not only she, like, left the scene of the accident. I'm like, Natalie, you can't do that. I know. I'm just like, oh my gosh, didn't you go over this in personal finance? She had the class, not in my school, but she had the class. I'm like, oh my gosh. So we've just been trying to look at actually each unit in the curriculum, and then kind of taking more of the next gen. I love the videos because it's a good introduction. That's about their attention span. 3 minutes, they're done. So, like, that hits home, like, okay, this is what we're going to talk about, and then get with more of the active activities, like you said, the role plays. And I like updating it with a little bit more current resources, like the LinkedIn and the professional profiles.
There's a lot going on there. Yeah, so for LinkedIn, I think, you know, I have a real life story about how hiring has changed. So those of you not familiar with LinkedIn, think of it as a Facebook for professionals. And so I'm in the market to hire a new curriculum developer because we want to create middle school curriculum, and we have like 20 other ideas on the drawing board. And so we put a job posting out, but then I also went on LinkedIn and searched for specific characteristics, specific job titles, and reached out to 4 or 5 people and said, hey, we've got this great opportunity at NextGen Personal Finance. Are you interested in talking about it? And if we've made an offer, and I'm crossing my fingers she'll say yes, but we're likely to hire somebody that didn't know that there was a job opportunity available until I sent her what's called an in-mail on LinkedIn to say, here's the job. And so that's the importance of employers are not sitting there waiting for resumes to come in the door. They're proactively going out and searching for candidates. And I think that's why LinkedIn, the great news is if you do a resume and cover letter, you still should do those because some employers still want that. That provides a great foundation to go create a LinkedIn profile. So you can still keep doing the same thing, it's just add an additional step to the process. All right, Dwayne, what are you working on?
This year, actually, I'm going to be teaching the honor classes, so they're acclaimed to be the higher learners in the building. So my whole thought process behind high school is if we're in a high school to help prepare these kids to be productive citizens, why not introduce them to the skills they need to be that? Most of the students in the honors class are probably going to go to college. That's just the nature of the beast. So I'm going to format our course, financial literacy, this year, since I'm teaching only honors, almost like a college format, more discussion. So I'm looking at the case studies that I'm going to incorporate as probably a good way to tie in the end of each unit, or probably do marking. I already talked to my supervisor, and he is not opposed to, instead of testing after each unit, buying a house, buying a car, and giving them 20 tests, why not group it into 3? Because if they go to college, they're going to get 2, maybe 3 at max in most classes. So let's expose it to them now, so then it's not a shock to them. Because if you ask every college student, their sophomore or freshman year, what's the biggest thing in the classroom as opposed to high school? Oh, the tests. I didn't know you only have one test or one subject that weighted so much. So not as bad, but something close to it. You know, shrink the amount of tests, make it more for each test so they can take each test seriously and know that it could be pass or fail as class if I don't pass this test, or if I don't study, it can show its rear end at the end of the semester. So I'm just going to format my honors class just like a college class as best as I can.
I want to sit in on that class. This was awesome. Let's have a big round of applause for our panelists.